All right, so welcome listeners to our first episode of the Smart with the Heart podcast. Today we are privileged to have Nick Maynes with us. Nick is a graduate from the United States Military Academy at West Point. Afterwards, he served as a field artillery officer in the renowned 82nd Airborne Division. During his military service, he notably participated in the liberation of Mosul from ISIS alongside the Iraqi army. Following his time with the 82nd, Nick transitioned to the world of academia, serving as an assistant professor of military science at Howard University. He is presently pursuing an MBA at the University of California, Berkeley Haas School of Business, and an MPA from the Harvard Kennedy School. Soon, he will begin a new chapter at Bain & Company in their Austin office. Nick is also a founding board member of Smart with a Heart and contributes significantly as the chairman of board of directors. Today, he's going to share with us the journey and insights into the impactful work of the organization. Nick, thanks for being on with us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bryce. You have a great podcast voice. I'm sure it's going to be captivating to a lot of our listeners.
It's super exciting. Like I said, I've always wanted to do this. So, Nick, let's explore a little bit about your background, establish that ethos and pathos here. So, could you share us some of your experiences from the military to academia and how that has influenced your leadership approach today, and what kind of spurred on this desire?
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in El Paso, Texas, from a military family. I always knew I was going to serve, but I actually didn't. I thought I was going to enlist my entire life. I was just very fortunate that my next door neighbors both went to West Point, and they're like, you should pursue higher education versus enlisting. So fortunately, I applied to West Point. Only school I applied to, which is a bad idea looking back, but I was very fortunate to get into the prep school and then eventually into West Point. So education early on took like a huge part in shifting my life. From potentially enlisting, which would have been a great path, but to higher ed. Then when I got to the 82nd, I noticed a lot of my soldiers were as they transitioned, they didn't know what to do. So I would help a bunch of them get into school. I think this might have been at the time service of schools was also coming up. So it was kind of a very informal relationship. I had a lot of my soldiers to help them get in universities. After I returned from my deployment, I wanted to do more within the education space. So I volunteered to go to Howard University to teach. Super rewarding experience. Once again, like reinvigorating my passion for like education. When I was leaving the military, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went and took a GMAT just blind and scored a terrible score. It was probably like 20 percentile. So I was like, okay, I can't go to business school. So I went and took one of those JMO consulting roles for about 9 months. I hated it. It was terrible. But while I was in DC, I took Sherpa Prep, which was a for-profit test prep company at the time, led by Nafiz and Jay, who eventually would help us spin off Smart with the Heart as they co-founded Smart with the Heart and Sherpa Prep. And that changed my life. It raised my score 300 points, something crazy, and helped me get into most of the business schools I applied to and with scholarship. So that kind of reinvigorated, like, okay, there's something here for someone like me who went and took a test blindly, had a low GPA at West Point, and they were able to get me into a lot of the top 10 business schools. And since then, have drastically changed the direction again of my life. So yeah, kind of where I'm at now and kind of why I help out now with this organization. Hopefully that answered your question.
No, absolutely. I love that because so many, let's say specifically junior military officers, we do end up self-selecting out of these prestigious opportunities. I'll speak from experience myself. I didn't really know much about the idea of going to graduate school after transitioning. Like, didn't think that was a thing really till I saw a lot of my classmates from West Point do that as well, and started thinking about it. But then I too, I was like, I scored. I think I used a test prep software, one of the more well-known ones. And after like 6 months of studying, I did so poorly on the GRE. I was like, well, there's no use here. And it was actually a counterpart of ours, CJ LeConte. He introduced me to, come on, and introduced me to this program. And it too just rocked my world. So totally relate. I love the storyline of just service, going from helping your soldiers, recognizing just a deficit, then even doing some self-evaluation in your own life, recognizing a deficit, and then finding a way to kind of help people, fill that gap. Now I think it's a great opportunity to kind of go in the origin story of this nonprofit we're talking about. So what inspired you to co-found Smart with Heart? You mentioned Nafiz and Jay and their integral role they played. What were the specific events that were needed that motivated you to launch this initiative?
Yeah, for sure. And just a quick caveat found Smart Sharper Prep, and I actually was the one who told CJ about Smart with the Heart when CJ
Oh,
was transitioning, and I was like, CJ's
great.
like, what do I do? And I'm like, here, dude, I think this is what you do, and it's good to see like that elevator just keep getting passed down.
Yeah.
So I expect you one day and me to run the conversation and be like, oh, Bryce told me about it. Like, oh, dude, I told CJ, who told Bryce, who told you. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, actually, Sherpa Prep approached me as because I was one of their students. I was really involved in helping them get military members to be one of the founding board members for it because Jay and Hafiz are ultimately the co-founders of both organizations.
Mhm.
So they approached me about we've been operational for a year, and then a year before that I served to help launch it. And it was kind of just the same thing. They wanted people who had that same passion for giving back to ultimately like the military communities and the underserved communities. And they wanted me to serve as the chairman of the board of directors. I served as chairman and treasurer for a little while.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think what motivates me is just kind of what it did for my life and then kind of what I've seen it do for other people's lives. And it's much cheaper than all the competitors. So I think like making it affordable because like with those high dollar costs for you see these like $2,000
Yeah.
plus price points for prep. And as a junior military officer, you know, like $2,000 is a lot of your money. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't know, 25% of your paycheck just go to prep.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was just this idea of like democratizing test prep and kind of reaching other populations that we weren't reaching before because for reference, Sherpa Prep was only in DC until COVID. And then COVID hit, they had to go remote. And even then, their capacity and scale couldn't really scale this high touch program. So they wanted to spin off the nonprofit, which would be lower cost point, but still high touch. So yeah, love the mission, love the dream. I love the founders. So it's a way of me giving back to the organization and hopefully helping more people like you and CJ and a lot of the other girls who got in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just so our listeners are aware, I mean, it's obviously it's veteran interviewing veteran here, so we're
Yeah.
very focused on veterans in this conversation, but we're really the mission of the organization is to really impact the minority population,
Yeah.
women, veterans,
Yeah.
the individuals where there's just a clear gap, like you said, like. I remember looking for test prep courses, and unfortunately, I did pay for one that didn't really
Yeah.
help me. But when you say $2,000, especially for somebody who's transitioning out from a really secure, guaranteed
Mm-hmm.
paycheck to the world of the complete unknown,
Mm-hmm.
that's a significant cost, and you don't know exactly what that benefit is, right? Like, is this
Yeah.
really going to work? And it's awesome to see. I mean, like with Jay and Fees and what they did, like truly scale those
Yeah.
classes. Like I remember
Yeah.
going through the whole program, and I loved how I knew that these were recorded, genuine, real classes. I was getting the same lessons that people paying for the in-person program were
Yeah.
doing the same homework and platform using the same platform. I absolutely love that. And then to know that that's now available in a really affordable price point for
Yeah.
everyone who can access it, I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
100%.
Great. Okay, so let's go into the vision for the future of this organization. Obviously, I'm brand new to this team. First thing I wanted to do is kind of get this podcast off the ground
Yeah.
and just reach out to people in any capacity. But I want to know what is your vision for the future? What is the team's vision for the future? Like what are the long-term objectives? And
Yeah.
I'd really like to take that opportunity to touch on our efforts to achieve the DoD Skill Bridge certification. Before I let you answer that, I do want our listeners to know if you're not familiar, again, this applies mostly to veterans or people still in the military who are transitioning out. The Skill Bridge program, also known as Career Skill Bridge CSP program, is available to you as you transition. At least for us Army folks, we can start a Skill Bridge 180 days out. So after we have an approved separation packet in or a retirement packet in, 180 days out, we can start a program and actually, do it for approximately 4 months until we start our terminal leave on the back end. Cool thing, even though we are not a approved skill bridge provider right now, as of June 10th, 2024, you still can request to have us be a skill bridge vendor for you. It's just a separate application. You could talk to your skill bridge coordinator. So even though it might take us a couple of months to get the approved DoD skill bridge provider like licensure, you can still use us if you apply through your CSP coordinator on post. So that's caveat there. Nick, I want to let you go ahead and talk about that, the long-term goals.
Yeah. So first, great to have you. As you've been on the team, you've been amazing already in this short amount of time, and we're really looking forward to working you helping this team and growing it with it. So yeah, really appreciate it. Just want to say thank you
Yeah.
there. The goals. So in our first year operational, from May of 2023 to May of 2024, we served about 150 students, which is pretty solid considering we don't have a marketing budget. It's a lot of word of mouth, sort of like
Mhm.
me telling CJ, CJ telling you, that network effect that I think a lot of us veterans have. We like build trust within an organization. You quickly tell all your friends, like, hey, this organization, we trust it. So we really want to get to about 500 to 1,000 students served in this operational year. So that's
Yeah.
one goal. We definitely want to increase our fundraising. We have not really launched a strong fundraising campaign yet. So that is something that I think we are looking into currently. It's a manpower issue right now. We have a
Mhm.
small team, but they all work really hard. So people are leading enrollment, people are leading fundraising, people are leading podcasts. So it's like we're getting there. So I think the two goals for the year that I can think of off the top of my head is increase student enrollment, increase fundraising. I guess the third tangential goal, as you just mentioned, is set up that career skills program so we can start getting more people in who are very passionate about the mission. At the same time, we can help them with their MBA or JD applications. Just so you know, we did put in a couple students who took the GRE to go to law school. I know anecdotally we
Okay.
put one into Harvard Law. I know one's going to Yale Law as well. So the GRE is a multi graduate school applicable thing besides I think med. So yeah, and then lastly, we're standing up our GMAT resourcing this year. Ideally, we have GRE stood up 100%, and GMAT will be stood up by the end of the year. I hope.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So those are some of those long-term programs, and I think it's
yeah.
great, especially still being so new. Okay, so on the same chord of long-term aspirations, I want to know what are the current struggles that the
Mm.
organization is facing? Because, and also like, what are some of the significant struggles and obstacles that we've overcome up until this point?
Yeah. I think off the top of my head, it's always going to be marketing against the big
Mm-hmm.
dogs and enrollment. We do get Google ads for free as a nonprofit, but it's hard to beat out those like Kaplan's and Manhattans. They just have way more money. I think some of them aren't even like publicly traded.
Yeah.
So that is one, marketing, getting the word out. I think sometimes there's a distrust if you see a $200 price point, you're like, oh, this can't be like a good product. But it is. It's a solid product. But sometimes that price point actually does the opposite and scares away people. They're like, oh, I'm gonna pay 2K. That'll guarantee I get into Harvard, opposed to like I'm gonna pay 200 and it's just gonna be a waste of time. So I think that's something we're working on. Another thing that we are working on is just breaking into all of the schools. I know a couple schools have
Yeah.
listed us on their veterans page of like, this is a great resource. So it's really just like building that trust and increasing enrollment are probably the two of the struggles. On the flip side, something we've gone through is I think 150 students in the first year is pretty solid with no marketing budget. That
Yeah.
is something like it's word of mouth. It's like taking a brand new product and selling it to 150 people with just word of mouth. So that is something I think we're pretty proud of. We've also been able to form partnerships with multiple organizations like Consortium, Service to Schools, SIT
Mm-hmm.
Reps, QuestBridge, Avid, the Coast Guard Academy. So I think forming those partnerships are something that we're pretty proud of, and we're still working on those. Over the past years, Bain and Company has actually allowed us to use a lot of their consultants before they start their start date to help build out organizations. That's another partnership we've been pretty proud of. So yeah,
Great.
a lot of work to do, but sometimes you need to stop and like look back and see like, oh, we've come pretty far. It always seems so daunting as you like go through it. You're like, there's so much to do, so much to do. And sometimes you just need to stop and like reflect and be like, dude, look how far we've come. So yeah. Hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, so you mentioned okay up till kind of like this point. What was the number that you mentioned exactly?
We're
150, something
we
like
did
that.
we did 150 in the first operational year. Yeah.
Wow. So honestly, when you look at that, like I was just one of those. I was one of the
Yeah.
150, and I can honestly say you guys impacted my life significantly. I won't go way too into detail, but like, my score was so bad that I honestly stopped all applications. I was like, this is just
Yeah.
not going to happen. I remember hopping on a services school call with one of my ambassadors, Phil White.
Yeah.
Awesome guy, but he was like, nope, just get back on it, man. And that's when CJ introduced me to this program, and it
Yeah.
helped me wildly. And now I'm going to Chicago booth. It's just
Let's
absolutely wild.
go.
I can't believe it. Yeah. So like when you talk about 150 people impacted, if it's even 1% impact like it did on me, that's a huge deal. But I do want to
Yeah.
talk about like something that you mentioned early on, like that price point.
Yeah.
Because I will honestly tell you, 100% true. When I was like looking at this program, I remember looking at CJ and I was like, "Is this thing legit? Like, are you serious?"
Yeah.
Like, I know I see the emblem, I know the background story. It's by Sherpa Prep, which
Yeah.
was a clearly vetted source up in
Yeah.
DC area. but it's like shopping on Amazon. Like if my wife wants something and she goes like, yeah, I really want this, I don't know, dash cam because we're moving to Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy this $63 one when there's clearly
Yep.
a $250 one, right?
Yep.
Obviously you have to do that a price comparison, but like it's just different. Like you think, well, if this can get me into a top 10, top 20 MBA program, there's no way it's only this amount of money. It's got to be
Yeah.
like 5 grand.
Yep.
Blew me away to be able to log into this program and the resources available. I mean, even the fact that you can have individualized touch points with the instructors, and,
Yep.
and not only that, like I think your team contacted me twice over the
Yeah.
course of the 6 months I was in the program, literally just to ask me how the program was going. I was
Yeah.
just like, this is ridiculous. Absolutely loved it. All right, so let's go into like how to get people involved. Now, obviously, we talked
Mm.
about the skill bridge, like, and we're working on how to bring people on board to not just do the program and do the studying with the program, but also participate in this nonprofit efforts. But like,
Yeah.
how can veterans, minorities, women become more actively involved with Smart with Heart? How can we get the message out there better? What could help you a little bit more?
Yeah, I think our big push right now has been reaching our prior students who are currently at business school to just
Mhm.
kind of spread the word because you all serve as probably the voice for people. Like you're gonna have tons of vets reach out to you now. You're at Booth. They're gonna say, "Hey, Bryce, like I'm applying to Booth. Where do I start?" So I think just being a trusted, verified source, passing that back down is a huge that goes a long way, and we can't even like measure that. There's no way for me to measure the phone calls that you take to that
Mhm.
lead to students. So that's something that I think is number one. Number two, we do have a advisory board. We try to have a couple people from schools lead initiatives, whether that be like partnering with the school, like mini fundraising. Big shout out to Todd McDonald at Wharton. He
Yeah.
actually got the Wharton Vets Club Gala to give us half of their profit as a donation to Smart with a Heart because so many
Wow.
of the students there at Wharton had done it and they're like, oh, totally, we will do like half the money from the gala can go to Smart with a Heart. So things like that I think go a really long way. As you know, at least in the West Point network, I'm sure in the same in Navy and the rest of the schools, that there's like this trust factor of like Bryce took it. He was a great guy at West Point. He was a great guy in the Army. I'm going to listen to him and follow his path. So I think that's kind of where we can either help be a voice for us at your school, or if you're really interested, reach out to us and we can plug you into the advisory board of directors and find initiatives for you to help us with. Yeah.
Awesome. No, I totally agree. And just so everybody who's on here knows, especially if you are a previous user of this program, with my story, I'm just about to collect my DD 214 before we logged on to this call with Nick. I was just telling him like tomorrow I'm picking up my final out, and it just super stoked about it. But as I realized I have this time on my hands, literally,
Yeah.
and I'm not starting school until September. I knew I needed to give back to my community. So if you're like me, you have a little bit of time, especially veteran minority, you just whatever,
Good.
give
Yeah.
back to the people who have given so much to you. So I really hope some people listening to this, even people who are actively still in the program, if they want to get
Yeah.
involved, I really hope they do. So, as we conclude, Nick, this is great because a lot
Awesome.
shorter than the 30 minutes that I thought originally. Closing remarks. Do you have anything that you would like to get out there message wise? Anything that you want to summarize for key takeaways in today's discussion?
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the key takeaways you took, what we both hit on, was that price point and what you get for it. I think with the high touch, like you get those individual tutorings, you get the one-on-one calls. It's hard to tell people like, oh, you get all this for $200, but I know it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like a sales gimmick, but it is what you get. That'd be number one. Number two is if like you're struggling with test prep or admissions consultant or anything, just feel free to reach out to us. I know the
Yeah.
founders, Jay and Nafiz, do a lot for free. I don't know if you use them for admissions consulting, but they did so much for me for some tiny price point. I almost felt like I owed them money after I was done. So yeah, just reach out. I think that's the big one. If you are on the struggle and you seem like there's the mountain just keeps going, hit us up, reach out. We're high touch. We will try to help you get over that mountain. And I think that's kind of like the story of Smart with the Heart. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Your story reminds me again so much of CJ's, because
Yeah.
CJ even told me he was, he during the admission process, going through the essays, because they're just such a freaking beast.
Yeah.
He told me that he hit up Nafees and he reviewed his whole application, basically created a narrative for him. I mean,
Yeah.
I've actually heard several people talk about how Nafees and Jay are willing to just, you hit them up on LinkedIn, they're willing to talk to you about this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And CJ said the same thing. He was like, Nafees didn't ask me for anything in return for the hours that he spent with me over the phone. I guess he
Yeah.
Venmoed him or something, just some odd
Yeah.
amount of money. But yeah, no, I
No,
totally love that story.
yeah, I think one thing that Pete did for me, just a quick caveat, it was the day of the GMAT, maybe like an hour, 2 hours before, and he was like, "Just call me the day of." Like, I'll make time. So I called him, and I was like, "Pete, is like it's the day. Like, here it is. All these months we've been working." He's like, "Dude, take a deep breath. Like, go get a mimosa and like sit there across the test and drink a mimosa. You're gonna feel good, and then go in there." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah." So I did. I like went and got a mimosa. I like at some random
Yeah.
bar at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. And I was just and I drank the mimosa and I was like, yeah, I guess I am kind of relaxed. And then I just like went in there and took the test. So like even calls like that, like you can't, I don't know any organization that's going to have their founder take a call with you the day of the GMAT just to tell you, hey, chill, you'll be all right. Go have a mimosa. So yeah.
Dude, I love that. Again, again, I'm so glad we had a discussion because I didn't know you originally got out. You use a traditional
Yeah.
JMO transition service, which we all know what those are,
Hmm.
and they serve a great purpose. I
Yeah.
think many of them are great organizations to help JMOs transition out. But you literally transition out, and then you went to Berkeley,
Yeah. Yeah.
and also doing this Harvard program as well.
Yeah.
This is incredible. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I failed. I failed for an entire year. Like I did not get in first time go. So I was like, kind of like, oh, I guess business school's not for me. So yeah, I think the organization being able to do that is, and I don't know if you know this, CJ is actually coming to Harvard now too, the same
yeah,
program I'm doing. So we're just kind of like passing doing the pass down.
I need to interview him next.
Yeah, yeah. Let me know. We'll set that one up.
Awesome. Nick, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. Again,
Yeah,
such an honor to be a part of this team. So glad. Hopefully this platform gets out and reaches people.
yeah,
Again, I will have in the show notes for our listeners, I'll put your LinkedIn in there as well as mine. If
yeah.
you're listening to this, it doesn't matter if you're a veteran or
Anyone.
not. If you are deeply interested in the services of this program, this organization, and believe in what we're trying to do, that's fill the gap. Please reach out to us. I
Mhm.
know, especially until school starts, you can hit me up, call me.
Yeah.
I definitely want to chat with you and see how we can help. But so thankful for this time with you, Nick. I appreciate it thoroughly.
Yeah, Bryce, thank you so much. That was a great podcast. I think you have a voice for it, and we're gonna see how famous you get. Next Joe Rogan.
You're doing great. All right, brother. You take it easy.
All right, bye.